Good evening, fathers. It's your brother CJ. Welcome to the Divorce and Custody channel for men. Tonight, I want to pay tribute to one of the greats, Kevin Samuels. As many of you now know, is late. He passed on May the 5th. And tonight I want to talk about the 10 things that I learned from Kevin Samuels. So I think that we're going to learn a lot from this tonight. So let's get started. So these 10 things are in no particular order, but I'm going to run through them and try to give brief explanations of each one to try to explain why when I found Kevin Samuels, he really helped me a great deal. So first, when I found the first video of, the Godfather, aka Kevin Samuels, online, I was going through a divorce. And so in that time, I was in a very low place in my life. I was broken. If you've been through a divorce, then you know what I'm talking about. Mentally, spiritually, physically, I was just in another place. But along with praying and doing everything else I was doing to get back on my feet, I met Kevin Samuels in one of his content videos. And then I began to learn some of the 10 things that I'm going to now break down. Now, Kevin Samuels coined the phrase high value man. Now, I have always considered myself a man of value, but I didn't consider myself a high value man until I actually heard the phrase spoken of by Kevin. And he described a high value man as a man who is LinkedIn certifiable as far as their career for at least the last 6 years. A man who earns 6 figures. A man whose gift or talent is of value to a fraternity of network of similar high value men. So what I started to recognize as he was going down the list of 6 things that he was calling out for a high value man, I recognized that I checked each and every box. But I had never looked at myself as a high value man. And as I said, I was going through a divorce at the time. That's when I started to self-reflect and look at myself afresh with fresh eyes and recognize that actually I was dating below my sexual market value. The person that I had married was way below my value, and I started to recognize that's probably one of the reasons why that ended in divorce, is because I didn't choose right for who I am and where I was actually trying to go. The second thing, I learned from Kevin how to operate completely in my masculine frame. What do I mean by operating in my masculine frame? See, I was raised by a single mom. And what happens is that when you're raised by a single mom, the only reference you have for dealing with the opposite sex or for dealing with people, your training is from your mom. So I didn't have a father figure in my life that could kind of help me with either a reference where I can see how they deal with misunderstandings or confrontations that happen inside of a marriage. While I was having girlfriends, that was easy to deal with because I didn't have to be committed. But when I became married and the person I was married started to come into my masculine frame by trying to be masculine herself and getting confrontational, I started to recognize that I wasn't a confrontational person or avoided confrontation, and instead what I would do is just take away privileges and help that person to understand that, if they chose to mess with me, all I did was take away privileges, but I did not actually confront them back. So they could occupy my masculine space and I wouldn't be confrontational, and as a result, what I would do is just pull away some privileges. When I was watching Kevin, I started to see him really get into heated discussions with women and be able to stand his ground and be able to use his thought process rather than his feelings, and still be able to be very clear and concise about what he was communicating and allowing the women to be able to say what they needed to say, but still hear his viewpoint. And whether they agreed or disagreed, they were very clear on where he stood as a man. That was a big lesson for me. The third thing I learned, it may sound like the second one, but it's a little bit different. I learned how to separate my thoughts from my feelings. A lot of women speak in terms of, I feel like you did this. And Kevin always said, I don't deal in terms of feeling. I deal in terms of think. I think this, therefore I state what I think. And he would say that so many times. I started to recognize a pattern. A lot of people, say they feel like something, but they haven't actually engaged in the thinking process of it. You know how they say that, thinking is a really hard job. That's why many people don't do it. I think it started to ring true as I was listening to a lot of Kevin's teaching, and I started to recognize I need to use more thinking than feeling. Number 4, I started to learn that when women deflect, it's a sign that they are actually wrong but won't admit it. And I started to learn this thing, and I started to see it over and over again. And as I was looking back in my own relationships, in my own marriage that it just crumbled, I could see so many examples of that. And yet I had no clue that that was happening while I was even married for so many years. One of Kevin's greatest discoveries was that women use shame, insult, blaming, and the need to be right as a way of deflection. When he would pin people down to say, okay, why did you leave your husband that you had a kid with and now are looking for a high value man? They had all kinds of justifications, but when he would pin them down, then they would use shame, insults, and things like that so that they wouldn't actually answer the question. Some of them would cry, or some of them would say, oh, Kevin, aren't you like my brother? And he would be like, I want the answers. And he was straight about that. He understood that science so well, and it was easy to tell when it was coming. You started to be able to see when it was coming, and it was almost as predictable. Like he would say, you can't make this stuff up, right? One of the biggest lessons for me was when Kevin talked about how to create your own inner circle. He called it a wolf pack. And I started to see him model what he was talking about, because he went out and got the lead attorney. He had MTR, he had O'Shea Duke Jackson. He had a few people in his corner who are necessary for the mission that he was on. Having an attorney in your corner, having a young brother like MTR with a lot of energy, having O'Shea Duke Jackson, who's a veteran, to be able to have those people. You are building something on the YouTube channels, and you have the right people. You have the legal representative, you have the marketing geniuses like O'Shea, you've got the energy of MTR. He was talking about you go out and find the right people for your purpose. Whatever it is that you need to do, put the right people in place and hang out with that crew, be accountable to them, and they be accountable to you. That for me was just huge. Number 7 was another really big one for me. When Kevin began to talk about products, the right kind of cologne to use, the right kind of undergarment to use for yourself, right, as a man, the right kind of underwear, right, the facials, how to take that facial, how much time to even spend in the shower. Now, I know that I'm a person of hygiene. Right? But when I was listening to Kevin, I was recognizing the need to step it up. And he was explaining why you needed to step it up. Those videos were just mind-blowing for me. A lot of people just watched Kevin Samuels for all of the talk about about women. I watched Kevin to try to level up in my life, in my private life, right? And when I started to learn about underguard, when I started to learn about the facials, the different kind of even when he was talking about most men don't think about the kind of underwear they use. They just buy underwear from Walmart and don't really think about the implications of even your underwear. When he began to talk about that, and I was recognizing the need to invest more in that area, right? I mean, those are things I had never really considered. Kevin spoke about how Michael Jordan and Kobe could not exist on the same team and win. The reason is because these are leaders, right? They are players of the highest pedigree. And if they were to be on the same team, one of them would have to fall back. And we can't see Michael falling back, and we can't see Kobe falling back. And what he was, the principle behind that was that if you're in a relationship, in a marriage, if you're the leader, you both can't leave the house. I was in a marriage where the other person was also trying to leave the house, and I was the leader of the house. So I'm in a place where I have to go out and compete as a man and then come back into my house and compete to be the leader in my house. And I was starting to recognize that principle, because when you're competing outside and you're competing inside of the house, but the inside the house competition is not clearly labeled, what happens is you're frustrated being at the house and you start to prefer to be at the job, because you know that that kind of competition, it is well drafted, it is well crafted, it is, it is clear that you are in competition. Not when you come to a house and then you have to compete at your house. Someone was saying on a TV show one day, they say that they were in the military situation, and they say that you can't have two orders as a military man. That will result in people dying. And I was recognizing that, if both of you are giving orders and those orders are different in a marriage setting, it results in a fractured marriage. It results in separation, or the dreaded word, right? Divorce. So number 9, when I had came out of divorce, my divorce cost me in the region of $35,000 in 3 years, right? And so I had used up most of my savings that I had at the time. And I remember that my sisters and cousins and friends, everyone had a girl that they thought that I should meet that was really cute. She was like young, she was in her 20s, she was beautiful, don't have no kids. And they were pushing all these girls, and I had a lot of girls in my inbox that were trying to get with me. And I recognized right away when I first got that Kevin Samuels video. In that video, he was talking about, if you're 40, 45, you don't really need to find another woman right now. What you need is to be on your legacy. What you need is to be on your purpose. And while I could have gone for another woman and try to wife up somebody right away, when Kevin said that, I decided to take a couple of steps back. And what I did was I started to reinvest and redirect my funds and started to buy properties. I bought 2 properties. One was like a 3-acre property. The other was not as big, about 1 acre. And then I started to developing, houses and, in those properties. And like I say, I started to do that. And right now they're about 30% of the way there. I could have been using that money again to try to get me into a relationship, again go through a wedding ceremony and all of those things. My last marriage, my last wedding situation cost me about $40,000, right? I was about to go and find another person, wife them up, and do the same thing again. And I'm grateful that the Godfather came right about that time and started talking about that specific thing, because he targeted my very age group and said, if you're between 40 and 50, what you need to do is to be on your purpose and on your legacy. And that right there just kind of changed things for me. And finally, number 10. And now that I'm at number 10, I realized that I have like 10 more things that I learned from Kevin. Well, number 10, I'm going to talk about, Kevin would always ask, were you trained to be a wife? And what he was getting at was that if a person was not trained by her own parents, by her own mother specifically, to be a wife, then you can't actually train that person to be a wife by marrying that person. That's a person you should avoid. He was asking, were you in a good relationship with your father? And are you in close relationship with him now? And in addition to that, he was asking, how long was your last good relationship with a man? And what he was trying to establish was, are you going to be the kind of wife who is able to have respectful cooperation, who can cook and clean, who is feminine, who is able to look after a family? Are you going to be the kind of person that can submit under a man? And the biggest lesson for me there was that I had never considered that a person needs to come from their own situation, having been trained to be a wife. So guys, I know you can tell from my eyes, I'm devastated that Kevin Samuels is late. He's really one of the reasons I started this channel in this space, because I wanted to offer something of value to other men such as yourselves. And so, we carry on the legacy, and I know nobody can ever fill Kevin Samuels' shoes. He was just, a beacon in our community. And so, guys, let me know what you think. And if there's anything that you learned from Kevin, feel free to put that in the comment section below. And as always, please hit like and subscribe and hit that notification bell to support the channel. And I have the ebook, The 10 Things That Your Lawyer Won't Tell You About Divorce and Custody. You can secure that right here at this link. And if you want one-on-one coaching on your personal divorce and custody situation, also you can send me an email using this contact at this link. But as always, in the meantime and in between time, it's CYA. Cover your assets.